if you were involved with Sabbath, you were close to them, you knew they were going to be great, you knew they were great. You booked night in Carlisle for £25 on a Friday night, the man would get on the phone on the Saturday morning and say, hey, I want to rebook them. And you say, I've got to pay more, so I'll pay £75. But someone ups the price 3 times like that, it happened. You know you've got a hot property. And you just, if you don't hear them, you don't look at them, look at the kids, and they were reacting to them. The London-based media hated them, the record industry didn't like them. So I made the album first in Zara Studios, we just talked about that. And I took that around 14 major record companies. I had an in the record companies because I just had a hit record. I've got Recommended on Parlophone. I've got Tea and Sympathy on the EMI underground label called Harvest. I've got Bakerloo on the same label. And soon we had Indian Summer on RCA's underground label called Neon. So I got to see the A&R man. And mostly they heard most of track 1 and a few seconds of track 3 and say, no, it's not for us. And one of the people I approached was Olaf Wiper at CBS Records on People Road, head of A&R, and he said, no, it's not for us. Then I went back to David Platts, the music publisher of Essex Music, who published things like Bowie, McCartney, Stones, Elton John, and he was the money behind Tony Hawk Enterprises. And I said, I want to record Sabbath. And he got successful bands making money through me. So he said, okay, I don't understand what you're talking about, but here's a budget. And he gave me a budget of £500. But I had to use his new producer, a company called Tuesday Productions, and the lead producer there was Gus Dudgeon, a great fame. His new producer was called Roger Bain, who never produced anything before, he was an engineer. And so you've really got to use Roger Bain, you've got to use Regent Sound Studios on Tottenham Road because they're cheap enough. So we went into the studio with Roger and he recorded in a day, as I described a few minutes ago, in a day he recorded what became the multi-million seller Black Sabbath album. And on the way back in the truck, we said, he didn't do anything, bloody useless, what do you do? Just sat there, press record. It took me many years to understand what a superb producer he was. Firstly, when we left it was just the music. He came up, without even consulting me or the band, with a thunderstorm, and the lightning flashes and the crashes and that wonderful atmosphere that preceded that wonderful guitar riff that introed the song Black Sabbath, which I still think is the greatest ever introduction to any rock and roll record, is the beginning of the Black Sabbath. That's right. Stunning. Yeah. So it took me a long time to realise that most producers, they try to add something of themselves. Often try and play tambourine or something on the track as well. They try to influence it, try to change it into their image. Roger sat back, listened, realised the guys had got it, he didn't need to mess with it, and just didn't mess with it, which takes a lot of courage, a lot of belief, and a total amount of discernment to decide that this is dead right. And looking back, he's one of the greatest record producers I've ever worked with. I've produced a whole bunch of records since, 220 albums maybe, and I always think of Roger Baines. If it's good, if it's right, don't mess with it, just leave it like it is. So with this finished production, which, as I say, is exactly what you might have gone out and bought, it was catalogued on the VO6 on the Vertigo label, and I took it around the same 40 record companies and the same set of notes. They turned down what actually became that huge selling first Black Sabbath album, not in a demo form, in finished form. And we were just about to put on Big Bear Records. I only had one record release on Big Bear, which was a single. I'd never released an album. I didn't know what to entail to release an album. So I just about to release it, and a phone call from Olaf Wiper, who in the meantime had been headhunted away from CBS to Phonogram to set up their new underground label called Vertigo. And he released albums in sets of 3. The first 3, VO1, VO2, VO3, were Manfred Mann's Chapter 3, Rod Stewart's An Old Raincoat Won't Let You Down,
Colosseum,
and Colosseum, John Housen Colosseum. Thank you. I didn't realise this, but he was just about to release albums VO4, 5, and 6, and whoever, I never found out, whichever band was supposed to deliver VO6 did not deliver. So he phoned me and said, Jim, that record you put, that great Birmingham band, we'll do a deal. I said, great, I'll be in the train first thing tomorrow morning. No, you don't need to come. I'll send you the contract. I said, we've not even negotiated. Well, you take what I offer or we don't have a deal. We were desperate. The band were biting our heels, saying we've got to sign, so we signed what was not a terribly attractive deal, but it was a deal which gave us distribution to the UK and throughout Europe. I retained the rights for America, and I retained the rights for Japan. The week of release, it was straight on the chart, number 52. We did nearly 7,000 units the week of release, and Olaf phoned me up, glowing and showed me more respect than he ever had before. He said, Jim, how did you do it? I said, how did I do what? And you put the records out, and all these kids I told you about were going to see the band 5, 6, 7 nights a week. They went out and bought it. What's so unusual about that? He said, no, he said, you must have bought it on the chart. Now, does that mean anything to you? In those days, it was common for the big companies who got the money to buy records onto the charts. For instance, if you're from CBS, your local rep, you might go to to your local record stores, and the charts were compiled through BMRB, British Market Research Bureau, produced based on diaries on the till in record stores, and they gave ticks. And what the record would say, I'll give you a couple of 3 boxes of the new Michael Jackson single if you'll give me some ticks for this other title. And that's one way to buy it on the records. As a development of this story is something rather weird. These guys used to fight over each other to try and buy their records on the charts. And someone had the brilliant idea, apparently, of going to the guy who put all the information into the computer, because he had all this nonsense about record stores and diaries, and for a while they handed him some money and he obliged. It soon exploded in their face. But Olaf was convinced that I had bought the record on the charts. I had neither the will and certainly not the money to do so. But so even then they didn't quite believe it. And that was the first album. The question was, I think, Evil Woman. Is that right?